Yeah. Coming up. Amanda.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Namaste, assalamu alaikum, and good evening, good night, or good morning to all of you. We are pleased to have people at this meeting from all parts of the world in different time zones. I am Amanda Hansavati, born in England, but lived in St. Lucia when I was younger. I'm a recent graduate from the Royal College of Art in London. This is the 285th edition of our ICC Thought Leaders Forum. We wish to sincerely thank all of you who have contributed in whatever way to the success of this ongoing Pan-Indo-Caribbean and Pan-Indian Diaspora Global Gurmukhi project. In the past 5 years, we have been here every Sunday and we have featured over 1,000 presenters from all parts of the world speaking on different topics. This weekly forum is being hosted by the Indo-Caribbean Cultural Centre, a legally registered research and publishing company operating since 2010. In order to continue this weekly programme and to make it better and bigger, we are asking for suggestions and volunteers. If you would like to give a donation or get involved in any way, please contact Dr. Mahabir for details. We send our condolences to the family and friends of Mrs. Vasanthi Chetty of South Africa on her passing. She spoke about her life experiences during apartheid on our programme on September the 21st. She was a retired teacher and a lovely person. Also, there's also other news. Mrs. Devi Rajab of South Africa, she celebrated her 80th birthday on the 6th of November. Our belated birthday greetings to her and birthday wishes and blessings for the year ahead. Our moderator today is Shalima Mohammed, the co-director of this ICC Zoom platform, who is a business teacher and researcher from Trinidad and Tobago. She obtained her master's degree in business psychology from Franklin University in the USA. Hello, Shalima.
Hi, Mandy. Thank you so much. Shakira isn't very well today, and we're very happy to have you here with us. So, ladies and gentlemen, assalamu alaikum, namaste, and a warm welcome to all of you. Thanks so much for choosing to be here with us. This program is being recorded on Zoom and live streamed on the YouTube channel of the Indo-Caribbean Cultural Center. So welcome to all of you on YouTube at this time. Speakers, to avoid intrusions from trolls, our IT manager has muted everyone. Please do not admit anyone, do not unmute anyone, and do not allow anyone to share your screen. We appreciate your cooperation. Today, we are talking about diabetes in the Indian diaspora. And according to Dr. Shadnan Harinandan Singh, Professor of Gurmukhi and Transnational Migrations, this topic is particularly relevant to interdisciplinary research in Gurmukhi. There is significant variation in diabetes prevalence across various states in India. In 2023, southern and more urbanized states such as Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, and Goa reported among the highest rates, often above 8 to 10%. In contrast, northern and less urbanized states such as Bihar and Uttar Pradesh which is where the majority of the indentures would have originated from, generally have lower prevalence levels of around 4 to 6%, though these rates have been found to be rising. Globally, the highest prevalence of diabetes is observed in Nauru, a small island nation in the South Pacific where more than 1/3 of adults are affected. The extremely high rates are associated with rapid lifestyle changes, widespread consumption of processed foods, genetic susceptibility, and reduced physical activity. The high diabetes burden in Nauru serves as a crucial comparative indicator for examining why descendants of Comitias in several post-colonial societies, such as ourselves, also exhibit elevated diabetes prevalence, and how historical, social, and nutritional transitions may contribute to this global pattern. We question, why do the descendants of the Comitias show higher prevalence levels than those in Bihar and Uttar Pradesh? And what can we learn from the situation in Nauru today? Ladies and gentlemen, we hope these questions and more can be answered by our esteemed panel of speakers. And we want to start with Shobha Dukaran. She'll be giving you a first-hand experience. She's the first vice president of the Diabetes Association of Trinidad and Tobago, and she's been living with diabetes for 18 years. She's deeply committed to supporting others affected by the condition. Welcome, Shobhi.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Sitaram. I'm just going to share my slide first. Nice. So this is my journey and reflections with the being a diabetic in the India diaspora. So on this picture, I will have a picture of my family, just showing my really nice family here. So the introduction, diabetes is one of the most prevalent health challenges among, I think I went, apologies. So I was diagnosed with diabetes 18 years ago. At first, I felt disappointed and uncertain. It was a turning point in my life. My mom, she had diabetes since she was pregnant with me, which was gestational diabetes. And my dad, he was a simple farmer, so we would have eat whatever he planted in the land, we would eat that. So we would have like carbs eaten. So I do know our eating habits would have been really bad. Now, living with diabetes, managing diabetes is a daily commitment. It was learning about balancing your diet, having exercise included, stress, and medication. I work in the oil and gas industry, and it was a very fast-paced environment. So stress was one of the biggest factor for me, and it was very difficult managing my levels. I had to visit the nutritionist. I visited the doctors. We tried different medications and the balance together with exercise. But the most important thing in my struggle was the stressful environment. So I would have learned to monitor my blood sugar closely and make mindful choices despite the demanding environment I had. Now, one of the things I had to do was finding a support group. So what I did is I had joined the Diabetes Association of Trinidad and Tobago as a normal member. And I found that group of people that I could have shared my experiences and I would have learned a number of things also. The Diabetes Association provided knowledge to empower and avenues to serve others with the diabetes. The family that I found there, you all will see the picture. This is not all the members in San Fernando branch that I'm the chairperson for, but we've fostered a family relationship where we would talk to each other even after our monthly meetings, which is just 2 hours for the month. And now we all reach out to each other and we support each other in the sense that if someone running low on insulin, we would try to help if it's a low income person and they can't afford, and we have the other members who could help. We all chip in, we come together, and we actually buy whatever that they require. The lessons that I had learned from my journey would have been acceptance, which is living with the diabetes. Discipline is one of the biggest challenge, and we must be able to accept that yes, we have diabetes, but it's not the end of the world. Education was understanding exactly what is diabetes. Diabetes is not just about eating lots of sugar, and lots of people have that perception. The support also, which is family, friends, and community, that made a very big difference in my journey. My family, it ended up being where my two sisters, they were diagnosed with diabetes also. And with me joining the Diabetes Association, they end up joining with me and they play an active part with the association. And again, it's advocacy through the Diabetes Association of Trinidad and Tobago. I've learned that awareness and education can transform lives. When you are educated and well informed, you could make a better decision. Now I'm going to empowering the community, where we encourage regular screening among families and friends. What I do with the San Fernando branch, and as well as the executive, we encourage lots of other people, organizations. We do screening on a wide scale. We promote healthy eating also while respecting our cultural food. I've learned portion size is the most important thing, because sometimes, like Diwali that would have passed recently, I really love Parsad, but I've also learned portion size is the most important thing. And encouraging physical activity like walking, gardening, dancing, whatever physical activity you could do. And another thing that I did learn through my journey was when you eat the food, you should exercise also, so we could burn out the extra stuff that we did put in our body. And again, to support community initiatives that spread awareness and break the stigma. Because in Trinidad and Tobago, lots of people, when they hear someone lives with diabetes, they think they should shun away from these people. And I've experienced a lot of people being judgmental to me because when I say that I'm a diabetic, even in the workplace, I get a lot of rejection from a number of groups and whatnot. Looking ahead, my mission as part of the Diabetes Association of Trinidad and Tobago is to help others live healthier, longer, and more informed lives. Diabetes is not a barrier, it's a call to live mindfully. What the San Fernando branch, as well as the Diabetes Association, we have a number of branches throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Being specific, we have 20 active branches. And we do a lot of awareness where we do lectures, we do screenings, and together as a community, we can change the story of diabetes in the Indian diaspora. Closing thought, diabetes taught me patience, discipline, and purpose. It reminded me that health is not just personal, it's a community journey. Thank you very much. And another thing is, let's continue to educate, support, and inspire each other.
Thank you so much, Shu. Very short and sweet.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Great, and I'll also open the floor. If any members of the audience would like to ask a question or make a comment based on what Shobha has said, please raise your electronic hand. You can go to the reactions button at the base of your screen, and in there you will find a raised hand icon. Please just signal that and I'll call upon you. So, Shob, you said discipline is important in your management of diabetes. Can you just share with us how has this affected your consumption habits?
Okay, so traditionally, I would have had like half of a roti together with, let's say, fried potato. But because I would have learned a lot about the nutritional aspect of eating habits, being living with diabetes, I would have learned, oh, you don't eat so much a roti. You should have at least eat like quarter of the roti and definitely not eat fried potato because that's carbs and carbs that goes together. So with that, that would have changed my diet when I had the discipline now, because it was a really long journey. I've learned to balance my food, especially being a Hindu. When we are fasting, it's very hard also to eat vegetarian food and to get the balance, to get my proteins, my carbs, and my veg also.
So what do you eat?
Nice. So what do I eat? During the morning time for my breakfast, I would normally do like a yogurt together with some fruits. I'll make sure that I have some nuts in it. I will eat that like, let's say 7 a.m. and by 9:30 I'll begin to feel hungry. So I'll do a fruit together with some peanuts. Well, not really peanuts, but almonds. And then lunchtime I've learned portion size when I'm eating food. So I practice quarter plate is carbs, which is normally I would do like a provision. On the next quarter is the protein. So if I'm fasting, I will do like beans or soya or tofu. When I'm not fasting, I do chicken most of the time. And then the next half is the fruits, not fruit, sorry, salad. It was a long journey having to have that discipline of eating, even when you go out with people or at the workplace, seeing people eating so much unhealthy things that it was a challenge for me, but joining the Diabetes Association and having educated myself and now being the chairperson for the San Fernando branch, I'm a teacher. So it's like, I practice what I teach also.
Excellent. Excellent. Thanks for that. Mr. Ken Sulain has a question for you. Ken, go ahead, please. Can you unmute your mic?
Yes.
Unmute.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear
Yes,
you.
hello.
Go ahead.
Yes, I am also a type 2 diabetic, and it also runs through my family. My father and uncles were all diabetic, type 1. And I was able to get my index, it's called the A1C, down, and also lose weight by exercise and by changing up my diet. And I find if you change your diet to more like a vegetarian and consistent with like what Indian people eat normally, it does help. And also the home cooking really helps to get it down versus if you eat outside, because when you eat outside, a lot of the food is processed. So I think, to have, number one, there's like a distinction between the type 1 diabetic and the type 2. And
Right.
the index they use is A1C. And that number is what the doctors look at, and they're always trying to get that number down. I think for type 1, it's a different number. But my question had to do with, I looked at this because I have it, and globally, Indians on the whole are rising in the incidence of diabetes across even India itself. And number one, what is the reason for that? And number two, is it more like hereditary? In other words, is it that Indian people have in their DNA this sort of gene that more turns on to diabetes? Maybe you could elaborate on that.
Okay, good. So thank you very much for those questions. I think that those are excellent questions for our second speaker and those to come after. So at this point in time, I'll say, Shobh, thank you very, very much for your contribution, and we'll just move on to the next speaker.
Welcome.
Let me introduce Professor Surajpal Tilak Singh. He's an emeritus professor of medicine at the University of the West Indies and practices as an internist and endocrinologist at the Medical Associates Hospital in St. Joseph. Welcome, Professor Tilak Singh.
Thank you very much for the invitation, for the welcome. Navin has agreed to put on my slides, and I will cue him when to forward them. Can we have the first slide, please, Navin?
Great.
You have to show your video. You have to turn on your video, Professor.
I will do. Thank you. I
Okay.
thought you didn't want to see me.
Yeah, we want to see.
It's nice to do so. Thank you.
Are you seeing me now?
Yes.
Fantastic. So long as you see the slides, that's good. So the theme of this afternoon's and well, today's meeting, because some of us may be midnight somewhere, is diabetes in the diaspora, the Indian diaspora. The subtext of my very short talk should be, did the Trinidadian Indian diaspora predict what was going to happen elsewhere? Elsewhere among diasporic Indians, and even within India, when internal migration occurred. And I hope that at the end of this talk, I would have convinced you that the Trinidad experience predicted largely what was going to happen. Can I have the second slide, please? If I refer to Greater India, I include Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka. This relatively small area of the very large globe comprises almost a quarter of the entire world's population. And this heavy density of population has driven emigration voluntarily and involuntarily for many decades, many generations, and perhaps up to centuries. The next slide, please. It is estimated around now that about 35 million have emigrated to other reaches of the globe. And this is arguably or ostensibly the largest diasporic population across the world. And whereas initially people may have migrated seeking economic fortunes, they probably still do to a large extent, but the pool was drawn from menial laborers, people who could work hard in the fields. And that was what drove early migration patterns, and albeit forced migratory behavior. In today's world, and more recently, following partition especially, migration has been more or less voluntarily and is capping the upper echelons of Indian society. The tech industry is driving it, engineering, and yes, medicine. A lot of West Indian medicine, a lot of medicine in the Western world is Indian. This map shows the density population for Indians who have left India. And you will see North America is heavily represented. The Middle East is heavily represented. Whereas in North America, people in high-tech industry and engineering and medicine will reside, in the Middle East is still largely menial laborer, people who are at the bottom of the society there. Nonetheless, my story today is going to relate to our neck of the woods, what happened in Trinidad and how it has evolved in Trinidad and the lessons it can teach us about migration from India to other parts of the world. Can we have the other slide? Thank you, Navin. So I will go back to the beginning. It's about almost 200 years now since Indians from the subcontinent arrived in Trinidad and Guyana. And in the population that emigrated was about 150,000, thereabouts. And they came from the bottom of the society in India. And therefore, their health status when they arrived were initially related to poverty and undernutrition. But it wasn't long at all that a new pattern of diseases started to emerge. And as early as the 1950s, diabetes, hypertension, heart attacks, and complications of diabetes were beginning to emerge. And there's one seminal case. It was the first case of somebody having a heart attack in the West Indian literature. It was that of Sir Vidya Naipaul's father. And the only reason it was recorded in the literature is because there was brisk correspondence between Sir Vidya's sister, who was then living in India, studying in India, and her father back in Trinidad. And by that time, Sir Vidya was in London. So there was a great triangle of communication. And in that communication, we read about the death of Sir Vidya's father in St. James, Trinidad, and the classic description of coronary artery disease and heart failure occurred in those those correspondences. And it's very interesting. He died of a heart attack, but it's possible he also had diabetes. The reason I'm saying that is because testing and confirming diabetes then wasn't as easy as it was today. But we now know for sure, and it also occurred in St. James, where Sir Vidya's family lived, that the St. James area taught us that diabetes and heart disease are really flip sides of the same coin. So if I say the word diabetes today, I'm really saying heart disease as well. You're speaking the same language. Could we have the next slide? Let's look at the evolution of the epidemic here in Trinidad. Theodosia Spoon-King from the south of the island conducted a major and landmark study in the 1960s. This paper was eventually published in arguably the world's most prestigious journal in 1970. He did a national survey of diabetes using the then standard criteria of a glucose tolerance test. And the findings were seminal. He found the highest prevalence of diabetes in the hemisphere. He found that Indians were twice as likely to develop diabetes than people, say, of African descent, and much more than people whose ancestry lay in Europe or were derived from Europe. Spoon-King also found that women were more likely to have diabetes than men at that time, and you will see why later on. More prevalent it was among Indians that Spoon-King used to say tongue-in-cheek that roti is the root of diabetes, or roti was the root of all evil. He was using the dietary preferences as a surrogate for being Indian. May we have the next slide? Not much later, in St. James. St. James is a precinct just west of the city of Port of Spain, for those of you who are not aware of it. But St. James was able to become diverse pretty quickly in that it had a healthy admixture of people of European descent, African descent, and many Indians settled there. In fact, many of the streets of this little precinct are named after Indian towns, Indian villages, Indian places. Delhi Street and a whole host of other names. Agra Street and other things. But this area became the focus for a large epidemiologic study that traced the evolution of disease, particularly diabetes and cardiovascular disease, and the risk factor for those in the late 1970s, early 1980s. And the findings were once again illuminating and seminal and extended what Spoon-King had found earlier. Not only was diabetes more prevalent amongst people of East Indian ancestry, people who were of the Indian diaspora, he also found that heart disease was far more common. You were far more likely to encounter heart disease. As I told you, Sir Vidya's father lived in this area and died of a heart attack in the 1950s. This was 30 years later. The epidemiology was showing that indeed Indians are more prone to heart disease as well as diabetes. And the other interesting finding from this study, in fact, was a non-finding. When they allowed and catered for all other possible known variables then for heart disease, they couldn't explain why Indians had a higher prevalence. In other words, if you knocked out the fact that they were thought to be obese or had diabetes or had hypertension or had high cholesterol or did smoke, even when you considered all those factors, there was an excess of heart disease among Indians. I'll show you later on why that may have happened. Could we have the other slide? I like to say what happened in St. James didn't stay in St. James, because wherever else, and even within India, wherever else migration occurred, whether it was internally or externally, the same kind of pattern started to emerge. So Indians who came to Trinidad, Indians, whether they went to South Africa, Indians, whether they went to England, Indians, whether they went to North America, the patterns of diseases that I've described for Trinidad was replicating itself elsewhere. So the middle part of the slide shows Southall. Southall is a district in England where there was a heavy influx of people from the subcontinent living together, particularly following partition. And when they studied this population in the 1980s, they found a 3 to 5-fold greater risk for diabetes compared to the native population, compared to the host population. And similar to St. James, they found an inexplicable increase in risk for cardiovascular disease, notably heart attacks. Detailed studies of the Southall population continues, and the data is more and more data is emanating. There are 1 or 2 seminal points worthy of noting. Indians were having heart attacks at lower levels of obesity than other populations, and I will speak more about that later. Dietary patterns were clearly different. Physical activity and behaviors were different. So there were clear differences in why Indians were separating themselves from the rest of the population. And I will say more of that as the talk develops. More recently, the Masala study, a very nice acronym for mediators of atherosclerosis in South Asians living in America, and aptly called the Masala study, is trying to tease out if the same phenomena or other factors, environmental factors or reversible factors, and all of this, they're looking for factors that could be picked upon to reverse, to prevent just the kind of problem that some of the questions are emerging already from the audience. And data from the Masala study will hopefully help us to identify what some of those reversible factors might be. Next slide. Wherever people from the Indian subcontinent have been studied, these are the notable differences for diabetes and ethnic predisposition. When diabetes occurs, it occurs earlier than the host population. Not only is it more common, it occurs earlier in life, at least a decade earlier. And when it occurs, it is likely to lead a more aggressive course. In other words, the complications of diabetes, the organs that are targeted by a raised blood sugar, namely the eyes, the blood vessels, the kidneys, those are small blood vessels that become particularly prone to occlusion and therefore leading to blindness, peripheral neuropathy, limb loss, damage to the kidney, the need for kidney replacement and dialysis. I've already explained that heart attacks, which involves larger blood vessels, the coronary arteries are slightly larger than the organs previously mentioned, but they too are prone. In other words, there's a double whammy of complications. Small blood vessels get damaged, as would occur in type 1 diabetes, but big blood vessels also get damaged, as occurs in type 2 diabetes. The questions about type 1 and type 2 have already been asked. Most of what I'm saying here relates to type 2 diabetes. As a general rule, type 1 is uncommon amongst Black populations. It tends to be more common among Northern Europeans. Not that it's not seen, it's relatively uncommon. When we see type 1 diabetes here in a young person, it's usually not type 1. It's type 2 occurring in the young, and it can easily be confused. We could clarify that when the discussion arises. The other general peculiarity of type 2 diabetes in our setting is that it's easy to miss because it occurs in Indians at a lower index for obesity. Your BMI doesn't have to be high. Your waist circumference doesn't be high. Our threshold for diabetes is lower than other ethnic groups. The final and important point, this is very visual, it's a measure of acanthosis nigricans. My next slide will show that. Can you show us the next slide, please? You may have seen people, or some of us in my audience may have this. If you look around your neck and you identify this marker, it's a clinical clue. This is what clinicians will look for when we want to predict or identify those at risk for diabetes. If you have this, you have a higher risk of having diabetes and heart attacks in your life. It also predicts what your waist might look like. And these are grades of it. At the top of the picture is grade 1. At the middle of the picture, you see grade 2 and 3. And at the lowest end of the spectrum, at the lowest picture, you will see grade 4. That means more severe disease. Can we look at the next slide and you will see what acanthosis predicts? Indians have a particular propensity for depositing fat around their middle, so-called centripetal obesity. This is the predictor of diabetes and heart disease and acanthosis nigricans, images of which you have just seen. Indians are very prone to depositing fat here. And I want you to understand that the threshold for being deemed fat is lowest amongst people from the subcontinent. Let's have the next slide, and I'll explain that a little more. The horizontal axis, so first of all, the left of the slide, A and C, has to do with women. The right of the slide, B and D, has to do with men. I want you to trace those curves shown in red and blue and green, etc. You will see they take off. They take off into the air as a jet is propelling itself becoming airborne. The rate of being airborne is highest in red. That's the Indian takeoff. They take off quicker. Whether you're a man or woman, you see Indians take off quicker. Let me summarize this complex side with some numbers in the next slide. Next slide. Focus on women and focus on BMI. BMI is a traditional measure of obesity. Look at women. An Indian woman with a BMI of 22 is equal to a Chinese woman of 24, is equal to an African woman of 26, and is equal to a Caucasian woman of 30. Look at men. An Indian man with a BMI of 21, similarly, is equivalent to a Caucasian of 30. And the figures are similar for women, but a lower threshold. Look on the other side. Look at the other side for waist circumference. An Indian woman's waist, measured with a tape measure, which you can do yourself, is 70 centimeters. That's equivalent. That carries the same risk as a Caucasian woman having a waist circumference of 88 centimeters. That's about 24 inches, 28 inches for an Indian woman, and 30-something for a Caucasian woman. In other words, the threshold for obesity is lower in Indians. Indians take off earlier with disease than other races. And that was the point. If you had used the same yardstick, you'll be misjudging obesity. And that's why the St. James study couldn't explain this exaggerated risk. We now understand the cutoff points have to be individualized according to ethnic groups. You may want to ask questions about this in the discussion. But just remember, an Indian woman waistline of 70 is equal to, carries the same risk as a Caucasian woman of 88. The summary of all of this slide is that the capacity for an Indian to carry fat is very small. And once that threshold is exceeded, you are in big trouble. That's the takeaway from this slide. Next one. At the bottom of the slide, this emphasizes that type 2 diabetes and its consequences, which you just heard about, is related to central obesity. But I want you to know that obesity, once defined and diagnosed, carries other risks. So this could easily be a talk about any of the other things I've mentioned that is going to be mentioned at the top. Obstructive sleep apnea, damage to your liver and the risk for chronic hepatitis, chronic fatty overload of your liver and cirrhosis, arthritis of your joints, raised cholesterol, hypertension, and not mentioned here, cancers. This could easily be a talk about why Indians are more prone to cancers, or why will they be more prone to cancers if you look? Why will they be more prone to blindness if you look? So obesity doesn't simply predict diabetes and heart disease. It predicts all of the chronic diseases, including depression. Next slide. Somebody is asking why this may occur. It's not easy. If it was easy, it would be solved. It's not easy. It's biological, it's psychological, it's social, it's genetic, and it's epigenetic. Each of these is a full lecture. I like to quote Naipaul on it. Naipaul attributes a lot of his yearning and writing to the fact that he was stressed out. And he thought he was stressed out because he didn't belong. Imagine when you migrate, how it must feel. Our ancestors migrated and the adaptation processes would have been extreme upon their biology, The stress hormones would have acted incessantly and continuously upon them. I did a little bit of research in this area in my own local area of interest and found that people of Indian ancestry do not respond to cortisol as other races do. Cortisol is the stress hormone. And in our adaptive response, we become resistant to the effect of glucocorticoids, steroids, cortisol. Cortisol is a stress hormone, and we produce too much of it during stress and become unresponsive. It's a valuable hormone, and if you stop responding to it, all hell breaks loose. The economic factors: when people get rich, their lifestyle change. They eat more and walk less. The old Indians of our country in Trinidad used to say, to live long, you must eat little. That doesn't necessarily happen when economic change occurs quickly. We spoke about the lifestyle changes that emanate from becoming wealthy: more cars, more electronic gadgets, less time to go out, less physical activity. In this regard, increasing your physical activity is a useful strategy and a useful skill. Calorie excess follows economic change. I want to focus on the last 2 points: the thrifty genotype, since it was asked about genes already, and the thrifty phenotype. Let me spend 1 minute. Do I have 2 minutes more for this talk? I hope I do. The thrifty genotype is a simple principle, a simple but profound principle. It says that populations that have been subject to great stresses over prolonged period, like those of us who came from the Gangetic Plains, subject to famine and floods and starvation and crises. When a food supply is intermittent, we learn to save whatever we eat. And those of us who survived have learned to survive on a blade of grass. And with that survival genome, when we reach an environment of plenty, we decompensate. So what served as a survival mechanism in a time of deficiency becomes a liability in a time of plenty. That's what the thrifty genotype means. We were designed for an environment of starvation. What does the thrifty phenotype mean? This is interesting. Our first speaker told us that she was a product of gestational diabetes. When her mom was pregnant with her, the intrauterine environment was preparing her for an environment of sugar. She, as a fetus, was exposed to a high prevailing sugar level as a fetus, and had to adapt to that high sugar level. And that could have led to decompensation of the pancreas. And the pancreas was programmed not to produce insulin in a reasonable way, or to fail earlier. And that's what the thrifty phenotype means. The intrauterine environment was hostile. And that brings me to my next slide. How do we predict what's going to happen? I'm afraid I've told you bad things. I think I have only worse things to tell you. Shall we see the next slide? Children are getting fatter. Our parents are fat, and our babies are getting fatter. Fat babies get diabetes earlier. I said currently Indians will get it 10 years earlier. They're going to get it 20 years earlier in the future. And that's why teenagers now are getting type 2 diabetes. In my practice, when I see a patient with a young person, 17, 18, with diabetes, it's not type 1. Even 8 to 10, it's not type 1. It's type 2, whose moms were diabetic, moms had gestational diabetes, and they not inherited, but the genes were programmed by epigenetic phenomena. Not a true genetic effect, but the proteins surrounding the genes were exposed to an environment of stress and methylated, and are behaving and responding differently. Can we get the next slide? I think that will be my final slide. I'm sure I've overstayed my welcome, but apart from all that you're going to hear later, and many others will tell you what to do, I want to focus on the third point here: protecting the intrauterine environment. Our government took up the cue that we should screen and predict gestational diabetes in all our pregnant moms. And it's now national policy that in Trinidad and Tobago, every pregnant mom is screened for diabetes twice in that pregnancy. The aim is to identify early, screen early, identify early, treat aggressively, and change the intrauterine environment, and give the baby and mom the best hope for the future. Gestational diabetes predicts diabetes in both mommy and baby. And that's the emphasis I'd want to leave us with today. Thank you very much. That's the end of my talk.
Thank you so much, Professor Tilak Singh. To members of the audience, please, if you have a question, we invite you to raise your electronic hand and we'll go ahead and we'll call upon you. Again, please look at the reactions button at the base of your screen and you can go ahead and raise your hand. Professor Tilak Singh, would you mind just turning on your video again, please? Thank you. So there are several questions at the top of my head. However, when you said we were designed for a survival diet, basically, are you suggesting that it would be okay for us to eat 2 meals for the day and eat nominally? Is that going to work? Of course, maintaining a balanced diet in those 2 meals?
So I don't think it's 1, 2, or 5 meals. I think you've got to add up all those calories, and however you choose to have them, it's got to be pretty calorie restricted. Not just in, not, so let's assume your gas tank is 5 liters. It doesn't matter whether you stop and fill it now or you fill it all day. It's 5 liters. You can't exceed that capacity. That's the first point. And the second point, how calories are derived also matters. So if my calorie requirements for the day are 1,500 calories, the trouble is it's hard to count calories. Anybody with diabetes will tell you that. Food doesn't come with a calorie counter in it. We just consume instinctively. If we could count them easily, that would have saved us a lot of trouble. But the second issue is we should derive more of our calories. It's been shown wherever Indians have been studied, they tend to, and our first presenter alluded to it. We go for calories from carbohydrates, and we overload ourselves with high dense calorie foods. If we derive more of our food from protein sources, including fat has been a bad word. You cannot overconsume fat, but you derive satiety earlier when you consume protein and fat than when you consume calories. You could eat yourself full with calories and exceed your capacity with carbohydrates and exceed your capacity for the day just with 1 meal. So it's really important to have a good idea of what your total calorie requirements are, but to change the macronutrients and to include micronutrients. The first presenter spoke about small meals regularly, including fruit and fiber and peas and beans and nuts. All of those are very good general recommendations.
Excellent, excellent. And thank you very much, Shobha, for raising that.
Let
Let me just ask a question on behalf of Vincent in South Africa. Vincent is type 1 diabetic, and his treatment protocol recently was changed and he was asked to start using Ozempic. So his question is it good and what are the side effects?
So here's what. I think that's a good question, but I think there are people like Anissa Ragby to come and others who will help me answer that question. First of all, I don't use Ozempic for type 1. That's the point I want to make. I'm not sure if the person asking the question is really type 1. I strongly suspect, here's what. When the diabetes epidemic started, first it occurred among women. Then it started to be found about both men and women. Now it's occurring in children. So if I see a 16-year-old or 14-year-old with type 2 with diabetes, it's likely to be type 2. They have acanthosis nigricans, and for the age they are overweight. So we have to be careful that we're not, based on age alone, diagnosing people with type 1.
All right. Thank you. Dinesh Munan from Trinidad and Tobago. Dinesh, you have a question? Can you please go ahead?
Yeah, good afternoon, Prof. Nice to see you again. Just wanted to know if you could touch on the latest research that regards fasting and its effects on diabetes. Extreme fasting, that is.
Yes. So first of all, if you're looking for a dietary pattern to follow, the best dietary pattern from the whole world is how the Mediterraneans behave. Copy, cheat, paste the Mediterranean type diet. Essentially, the ingredients are small meals regularly, high content of fruits, fresh vegetables, nuts, fish, and so on. It's easy to copy a Mediterranean style diet. Just go online and find out what they do. That's consistently the best dietary pattern in the world. Secondly, reduce the amount of carbs in your diet, calorie count. And third thing, if you're going to fast, make sure your fast counts, minimum 14 hours. So if you have dinner at 6 o'clock, you're not going to eat breakfast till 8 or 9 o'clock the next morning. If you're going to do an intermittent fast, make sure it counts. Go for at least minimum 12 hours. preferably 14 hours.
Very good. Thank you. Dr. Mahabir, you have a question?
Oh, no. I didn't raise my hand.
Okay, good. So, Dr. Amrani, I see your hand
Maybe
is
she can
up.
address hers in her
Yes.
presentation.
Oh, yes. Sorry. Maybe we
Yeah.
should move on then.
Yes. Let's do that. She has the
Great. So,
presentation.
Professor Tilak Singh, thank you very, very much. Hopefully, we should have some time at the end for some more questions. We're moving on now. Thank you again. Ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker is Dr. Anisa Marianne Ragbir. She's a leading specialist in diabetes and endocrinology. She established the Medical Optimization Clinic and the Adolescent Diabetic Clinic, championing holistic patient-centered care. Welcome.
Hi. Do you all see my slides?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'm here. Thank you for the opportunity to present today. So I hope what I say today will add to our previous speakers and speakers to come. So what I want to talk about today is the metabolic imperative, a holistic approach to diabetes management in the Indian diaspora. So the global prevalence of diabetes presents a formidable challenge to public health, projected to increase exponentially to 700 million people by the year of 2045. Within this growing pandemic, the burden borne by populations originating from South Asia, a region alongside China, which accounts for approximately 60% of the world's diabetes population, which is disproportionately high. Migrant communities of Indian descent face an accelerated risk profile compared to their Indian counterparts in host countries. In this analysis, using nationally representative data from the United States, reveals the prevalence of diagnosed diabetes among Asian Indian adults is 8.3%, which is substantially higher than 5.8% observed in the non-Hispanic whites. Diabetes in the Indian diaspora presents a unique and urgent metabolic crisis, driven by an inherent genetic predisposition to insulin resistance and accelerated by the negative consequences of acculturation, specifically the psychosocial stress and dual dietary loss. So not just the loss of protective foods, but also the introduction of refined foods. The clinical presentation of type 2 diabetes at a younger age with lower BMIs, coupled with a profound socio-cultural barriers such as stigma, medication hesitancy, structural limits to exercise, and complex family dynamics, necessitates a radical departure from the standard Western therapeutic models. So in order to understand the root cause of diabetes, we need to understand insulin. And if I ask anybody in the audience about what insulin is or what's the point of insulin, they will just tell me it's usually a blanket statement that it's there to reduce blood sugar, when it has such a far greater role than that. So in all of our bodies, we have this organ called our pancreas. And this pancreas produces insulin, one of the functions of the pancreas. So our body is made up of cells, 40 trillion cells, in fact, and all these cells require energy because you need energy. We all need energy for everything. All these thoughts that we think require energy. To walk from point A to point B requires energy. For you to grow your hair requires energy. For your body to heal and repair itself requires energy. And the main fuel for this energy comes from the food that we eat. So we call that sugar, glucose, And what insulin is really doing is working on those receptors to the cell to allow this glucose to go from outside the cell to inside the cell to create energy. And that's what people are not understanding, that the key role of insulin is really to create energy in your body. So this video here is just showing us the same thing we just said, that insulin is working as a key to the door to allow glucose into the cell, to allow energy to be produced. So as we alluded to in the previous talks, all diabetes, high blood pressure, polycystic ovarian syndrome, fatty liver, Alzheimer's, which they now call type 3 diabetes, also cardiovascular disease, all comes from this root cause of insulin resistance. So we really, really have to understand what insulin resistance is. So when does insulin resistance start happening? So people are of the view that insulin resistance starts happening maybe 5 years before they develop diabetes or 10 years before. But the truth is, insulin resistance starts happening from childhood and possibly from even in utero. So what does that mean? So you know that thing where we say, well, that child, small, he could eat and drink whatever he wants, he'll burn it off. Well, that's not true. Insulin resistance is happening since then. So what we need to understand that every time we have a meal, we have a glucose spike, followed by an equal and opposite insulin spike to deal with that glucose load. So it will go into the cells for energy if we need it at a time. It will store it in the liver as glycogen as an energy source, or it will store it as fat as an energy source for later on. So what happens when we have a meal? So let's take a typical day in the life of a Trinidadian. We go down the road and we have a doubles. We have a sugar spike, followed by an equal and opposite insulin spike. Then who eats one doubles? We eat a second doubles. We have a bigger sugar spike and a bigger insulin spike. Then we drink what we do. We drink an apple J or red Solo to wash down this doubles. Bigger sugar spike, bigger insulin spike. Then we go home and say, oh, we'll eat a little piece of cake. Bigger sugar spike, bigger insulin spike. So that's multiple insults on these insulin receptors. And this is one meal over how many years? So that constant knock, 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 knock on these insulin receptors make them become very, very dull over time. Yeah, so that is what insulin resistance is. So in a type 2 diabetic, we have a lot of insulin. And a type 1 diabetic, their pancreas is not making insulin anymore. So that's why we have to give them exogenous insulin and injection. Sometimes a type 2 diabetic begins to require insulin eventually because the stimulus required to work on these insulin receptors becomes more and more and more and more over time. So this is the problem here. So this is why some people, as Prof was saying, they're on insulin, but they may be still a type 2 diabetic, but they have really, really bad insulin resistance. Yeah. So how do the complications of diabetes happen? Well, the complications of diabetes happen in 2 ways. Yeah. One, the sugar is not getting into the cell, so we have less and less energy over time. Yeah. So people think, oh, I just getting older and that's why I have less energy. But it's because one of the reasons could be because they're having increasing amounts of insulin resistance over time. And basically, this food is not getting into the right place. And where is it staying? It's staying outside the cell. So that's the blood sugar that we're testing. Yeah. And this blood sugar that we're testing is not in the right place, and it's now depositing on everything in our body to cause the complications of diabetes. So it will deposit on your eyes to cause diabetic eye disease, on your heart to cause heart disease, on your kidney to cause kidney disease, on your feet to cause neuropathy and vascular problems and all kinds of different issues. And that is how we develop the complications of diabetes. So we need to get the sugar from this place into the right place to give us the energy that we can have so we can live and thrive and feel really good. What is this HbA1c that everybody's talking about? So this HbA1c is the sugar that's depositing on everything, also deposits on your red blood cells. And your lifespan of a red blood cell is 120 days. So when we do an HbA1c, we're able to now understand what your average sugar has been for the last 3 months. So that's why it's a good tool for monitoring, but it's not an exact tool because it's just your average and it doesn't tell you what your sugars are doing from point A to point B. So how can diabetes be a good thing? So when we think about diabetes, everybody always wants to be like, oh my God, I have diabetes, and this big stigma and this big awfulness that not just other people, but people feel within themselves that, oh my God, I've been diagnosed with this chronic disease. So according to Eckhart Tolle, he says, anytime we're at war with anything, we're destined for failure. So if we're at war with crime, we fail at crime. We're at war with terror, we fail at that. So we should not be at war with diabetes, and we have to think about how is this diabetes is really trying to help us. So what diabetes, I think, is really trying to help us is to create balance within our life. Yeah. And this diabetes, this blood sugar that we're testing is a marker of whether or not we have balance. So where must this balance be? The balance has to be in our diet, which is both the food that we eat and what we drink. Yeah. So if we go and eat a KFC or a Royal Castle, obviously our palates might like it, but your your body does not like it, so your blood sugar is spiking. So see how it can be a marker of balance. You drink water, your sugars are nice and stable. You go and drink juice, you're going to be spiking your sugars. So the next part is how we move. We need to, so as people get older, they think, okay, the only thing that we should be doing is walking. And yes, that's a good, all movement is good movement, but we have to explore all the different types of movement, because we know the days that we are more sedentary, our sugars are going to be higher. The days that we move more, our sugars are going to be more regulated. So what kind of movement do we have to think about? We have to think about 4 parts, not just taking a walk. And an important thing I want to raise is about weight or resistance training. So I have a patient and she says to me, the only time she can get her HbA1c within range is when she goes to the gym and she does strength training and does weight or resistance training. Why is that? Because after the age of 30, we all lose muscle mass. And I want to suggest that maybe in the Indian population, we actually have a slightly less muscle mass compared to our counterparts. So we need to be making sure that we're maintaining muscle. Why is muscle so important? Because muscle eats up all that sugar that's free in our body. And if we have less and less muscle and we're getting less and less muscle with age, we need to continuously figure out how are we going to maintain muscle mass. So exercise must include our aerobic, which cardiovascular health. It's going to establish good cardiovascular health. It must also include weight or resistance training. It must also include flexibility, because what happens as we get older? We all become very stiff. And we must also find time to do some balance or equilibrium training, because as we get older, we also fall down. And we don't want to lose something and then to try and see how we're going to find it back. We need to be maintaining it from before. So in 1 week, we have to be thinking about how can we incorporate a little bit of everything in 1 week. And it could be something very simple. It doesn't mean you have to go to the gym. If you go on YouTube and you pull up 20 minutes of yoga, or if your mobility is a little more limited, you could do chair yoga. Then you're going to cover some resistance training, you're going to cover some flexibility training, and you're going to cover some balance training. So we have to figure out ways to think outside the box. The last place where we must all have balance is in how we manage stress. And why is this so important? Because if we're stressed out, well, we don't really care what we eat or how we move. That's the last thing on our minds, yeah? And what is this stress response? So back in the day, when our ancestors were stressed out, they were running from a lion or a tiger. So when they were running from this lion or tiger, the body says, oh my God, you're in danger. You need more energy. So it starts to release sugar, so you have energy to run away from your predator. So now we're actually no longer running away from a lion or tiger, but yet still we are constantly in this stressful state. We're all surviving the day to get to the next day. What we have to do, what meeting we've had, what stressful encounter we've had with a family member or with someone in work, all these things, we're in this constant state of stress. And there are 4 types of stress. So the first type of stress is physical stress, yeah? So if you don't sleep well, you'll notice that you wake up in the morning with a higher blood sugar than if you had a good night's rest. If for like Old Year's, New Year's, you do a whole night, then you might actually be more insulin resistant for 3 days after, and you actually crave more sweets when you're sleep deprived. If you have infection or inflammation in your body, you could not eat anything and your sugars will still be elevated, because that is the stress response of the body. The second part is emotional stress. Emotional stress is very important, and that includes any feelings of anxiety, sadness, depression, loneliness. So why is this important? Because we're constantly bombarded, if not from social media and from news, and we're constantly consuming things all around us. So we have to build awareness about what we consume. So if people are on social media and something they look at makes them compare themselves or their body to someone else's, well, you probably should not be looking at that, because it's eliciting a stress response in your body and your sugars are probably going to become elevated. If you are constantly watching news all the time, well, then your stress response is probably going to be higher than another person who isn't. The next type of stress is mental stress. So mental stress is you constant, oh, I have to go here, I have to pick up this, I have to buy this in the grocery, I have to send this email, I have to check this person. And this constant blah, 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 blah is not how our minds are meant to be. We're meant to turn off for periods of the day. Yeah, and the constant going and going causes a stress response in our body. And the last type of stress is anticipated stress. which is what we have for ourselves and we have for our loved ones. Well, what's going to happen next week, next year, 5 years, or 10 years from now? So what is the point of worry? There's literally no point of worry, and all those stress hormones are now going to elicit this stress response within our body, which is going to cause increased blood sugars. So today, I don't have time to go through all these different sections in details, but we want to I will just look specifically today at diet. So the challenge of dietary fragmentation and acculturation. So across multiple studies, adherence to dietary recommendations is consistently identified as the most formidable challenge faced by patients living with diabetes. This difficulty stems not from simple non-compliance, but a complex interplay of cultural norms, which is social pressure and the dietary fragmentation induced by migration. So acculturation often results in a nutritional deficit. While Western diets introduce high-calorie processed foods, the migrant diets simultaneously experience a reduce in the intake of traditionally protective foods, such as beans, lentils, fiber, fruits, and vegetables, which are all known to increase metabolism and increase the risk of type 2 diabetes. So what's our plate looking like right now? Well, this is typically what our plate looks like right now. So I will never say even when people say though they're on a vegetarian diet, and you think, oh yes, the world is moving more towards a whole foods plant-based diet or Mediterranean diet, because both are what are currently recommended for the management of diabetes. But even a vegetarian diet is very carbohydrate heavy, and we want to be nutrient dense heavy, not carbohydrate heavy. So all these plates, what do you think these plates are very much lacking? They're very much lacking vegetables. So this is what our plate should look more like. Half our plate should be vegetables, quarter of our plate should be fats and proteins, and quarter of our plates be healthy carbs. Yeah? So this is what the plate should ideally look like, not what we looked at here, because this is going to definitely raise our blood sugars. So in conclusion, changing perspective is key to changing disease. I hope in understanding the fundamentals of diabetes and insulin resistance, we all take steps to make the right choices. Do not wait for something bad to happen to create change. Create change now. And these are my references, and thank you. Open to any questions now.
Dr. Ragbir, excellent. Thank you so much for ending on a positive note. Really appreciate that.
You're most welcome.
So ladies and gentlemen, please do raise your electronic hands so that we can go ahead and take a question for Dr. Ragbir. May I please ask, again, this question for Vincent. What do you think about Ozempic? What are its side effects in terms of treatment of diabetes?
So all these GLP-1 agonists have a role, but they're not meant to substitute for the lifestyle change that is required. So yes, they're going to help curb appetite, but if you're curbing appetite and you're eating less for the day, you're also going to get less nutrients in your day. Yeah? So what these GLP-1s do, they allow you to lose 60% of fat mass, but 40% of lean body mass. So if you are not eating the right meals and the right nutrients, and you're not exercising and you're not doing all the things, you're going to end up with more complications. So it's a good supplemental tool, but not to replace diet and lifestyle changes.
Mm-hmm. Excellent, thank you. I'm just looking at the chat and I'm seeing comments here being raised about rum. So, rum should be banished from all Indians. One shot is like drinking a cup of sugar, and it's also bad for the liver, according to Ken Salane. And Chand, who is in the US, originally from Fiji, is saying, how can rum be banned from Indians when distilleries are built right next to sugar mills?
So what we have to understand is that everything is always about money. And until we recognize and each person wants for themselves something different, then the answer is not from banning things. Each person has to make an active decision of what kind of life they want in the next 5 years or 10 years. And then you have to make your decisions today that can affect your tomorrow.
Yeah, especially in terms of what we put into our bodies. We only have one.
We only have one.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate that. Basmati rice, I switched to eating basmati rice. It has a lower glycemic index than the type of American converted rice. So I noticed on your ideal plate, there is indeed some rice. Is there any comment
So
on
when we think about everything, we have to think also, if we think about rice, white rice is here, brown rice is better than white rice. Parboiled rice is not brown rice. People get confused and they think it is. Brown basmati rice might be better than that, and quinoa might be better than all that. The thing that's making it better and better and better is the amount of fiber in it. Do you know why they took fiber out of things, interestingly? The reason they took fiber out of things is because they realized it had a longer shelf life. So it was really for them to make more money, and our palates have adapted, and now that's all we want. So we have to take time to recondition our palates into wanting the right thing.
Yeah, excellent. So good. So I'm not seeing any further questions or comments, and I really want to thank you very much. An excellent presentation like the others. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear now from our fourth speaker. And this is Dr. Amirani Jarbundan from Suriname. She coordinates academic programs and health initiatives and serves on the board of the Diabetes Association in Suriname. She's also a sitar teacher, yoga student, and CrossFit athlete. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yes, I want to ask Naveen humbly to put on my slides. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Naveen. Yes, this is my first time for this presentation. The next slide, please. This is my disclosure slide. Yes, next slide, please. So thank you so much for this opportunity. I would like to introduce Suriname very fast. Suriname is located in the northeastern part of South America, and the capital is a district, Paramaribo. So we have 12 districts, and District Paramaribo is the capital. The climate is tropical with a high humidity, population of 640,000 people. The official language is Dutch, but we have many other languages spoken, especially by the Indian diaspora, which is Sarnami, closely related to the people from Calcutta, which is, I think, from Bihar also. I think it's another native language, but it's closely related to Hindi. And the ethnic group, the variation is high, and the largest ethnic group is the Hindustani population. And our healthcare system is a mix of public and private facilities, in which the larger hospitals have more advanced care in comparison to the smaller medical services. And the economy is largely dependent on natural resources like mining, oil, agriculture, and forestry. The life expectancy is around 70 years, and out-of-pocket payment for health expenditure is very high, which is 50 to 55%, and the medical coverage rate is lower now, but the 2020 estimates were 50 to 60%. Next slide, please, Naveen. Thank you. So the top 5 causes of death in Suriname are shown there, and what pops up is diabetes mellitus in the last decade. And I can relate to all the other presentations before, and would like to skip this part, but emphasize that diabetes mellitus is characterized by hyperglycemia with disturbances of carbohydrate, fat, and protein homeostasis. So next slide, please, Naveen. Yes, so next, can we have all the pictures? Yes, this is an overview of the, yes, next. Sorry for this. Yes, next. One more. Yes. So an overview shows us that a few districts pop out when it comes to diabetes mellitus type 2, and that's Nikeri, Comoena, and Wanica. Next slide, please. Nikeri, Comoena, and Wanica are, yes, next, please click further. Yes. So they are characterized by the Hindustani population. In Nikeri, we have 70 to 75% of the Hindustani. And nationally, there's nearly 30% of adults affected, which is already more than the 9% of the whole of the Caribbean. And in Nigeria, there was the highest rate of 16.3%, which is explained by the population distribution. There are more Hindustani living there. And the challenges are weak infrastructure, limited access to consistent care, high costs for patients. Insulin is the most expensive fluid medicine in the world, I think, and due to healthcare inefficiencies, the high costs for patients are unimaginable. Next slide, please. So we have universal healthcare, but insulin is not readily available for everyone, especially in the rural areas. And Nikeri is 4 hours travel from the capital, Paramaribo. The national response to diabetes in Suriname was the adaptation of the HEARTS protocol, in which we had the screening and early detection of diabetes, lifestyle modification support, multidisciplinary care, including physiotherapists. And RGD is for the regional clinics who provide basic health care. And they now do food screening, medication management for the patient, and movement and nutrition counseling. So that takes up a lot of time to train the staff. Next slide, please. And we also implemented the tobacco law a few years ago and upregulated, well, actually increased the tax for cigarettes, alcohol, and other, like for instance, juice with a lot of sugar in it. So the tax for these items were increased by 50%. And next slide, please. Yes. So we all know the pathophysiology of type 2 diabetes, which is insulin resistance and impaired glucose metabolism. And the common complications are neuropathy, retinopathy, nephropathy, and cardiovascular disease. But there's also a thing that we see more obesity in the Hindustani population in Suriname, and also more and more Hindustani on dialysis in the dialysis centers here, which are popping up like mushrooms in Suriname right now. And the care is very expensive for a patient. So this is also due to our high costs for medicine, but also the way we live, because Surinamese tend to endorse a lifestyle that promotes NCDs. So on the right, I included a small image to show you that actually Professor Tuk Ali Singh, sorry, he already talked about this, but adipose tissue, I wanted to emphasize, is not a tissue that's just lying around there. It's an active tissue which actively stimulates inflammation in the body, increasing the chance of insulin resistance, and also then all the complications that comes with the chronic kidney disease and everything else. So in Suriname, a study also shows that Hindustani have the highest prevalence, in metabolic syndrome. So that says it all. It's the way they also live. Next slide, please. I would like to elaborate on that. Yes, so the way, here is the role of movement in diabetes management at this moment in Suriname. We, the physiotherapists, provide a lot of training on aerobic and resistance training, balance and gait training, patient education, and timing of movement. So if we consume the right diet, there's no need for medicine if you're not a patient yet. So foods to include are foods that are naturally like that. So when you consume food that's not that doesn't have the image as it was when taken from nature, then it's already processed food. So that's the way that we actually try to educate low educated people who have the highest risk of developing diabetes. And also, we also try to emphasize the timing of movement, and also by doing case studies and live demonstrations. So the timing of movement is that we advise that after this meal, especially in the afternoon, where they consume a lot of rice or roti or other carbs, that they have short walks of at least 10 minutes. But if that's not possible, then they do a simple set of exercise, which is a part of your daily routine. Next slide, please. And that's sit-ups. So the exercise prescription is set out in our HEARTS protocol right at this moment, but we show them that just by, if we play the video to the right and click on play, Navi, then it's just getting up and sitting down for 30 times. So 15 with your right leg to the, yes, and then 15 with left leg. And then including weight makes it resistance training. So that's when you are used to this, and it's part of your daily activity. So it's not complicated for the elderly or people at home to adapt to such an exercise. And next slide, please. When we look at this case study, which we did as a live demonstration, next slide, please. I will come back to this one. Yes, then we see that the diabetic female was 80 years and an insulin user and had uncontrolled glucose levels and was busy regulating her levels with the general practitioners, who was changing and then adapting again the effect of medicine. Then we saw that when we told her to do the 30 times sit-up, the difference of glucose was 3 millimole per liter, which is a lot for a simple exercise such as the 30 times sit-ups. And I know that glucose management in the body is multifactorial and different for everybody, but such a live demonstration in previous slide, please, Naveen, in the group where we have all the people who are interested in diabetes education and are also diabetic in the diabetic union in Suriname, they are amazed by these changes in the glucose levels, whereas medicine could not induce such changes. And also the last presentation that we had about food also changed their perspective on how to consume, because the only thing we told them to change for now was leaving bread out of their diet. And bread, we said, was a combination of fats and carbs, which is naturally not seen in nature. And it's also a destructive combination because it produces a drug-like dopamine reward in the brain and is therefore highly addictive, but also it has increases the risk of those sugar spikes, because they already know that they have to wait before they drink after a meal. They wait at least 30 minutes, but still the sugar spike was happening. So one of the posts in our group, our WhatsApp group, was that they were amazed after experimenting after this information session about leaving bread out of their diet. And this was for us another eye-opener of giving more nutrition-based counseling and giving an easy type of plans that they can adapt, because in Suriname it's hard to get nuts everywhere from a Mediterranean diet plan. So granola, I don't know if you know granola, which is the combinations of those seeds and nuts. That's very hard to get here. And they are very happy with these small changes because they cannot change their diet due to costs of living, high costs of living, very easily. And then when we talk about movement, previous slide, please, and then I will end. How much time do I have? Am I okay? Yes, I hope I'm okay. So when we introduce resistance training, we also emphasize that muscles can hold about 300 grams of glucose, while your bloodstream can only hold 4 grams of glucose, and your liver can hold around 100 grams of glucose. So why not use your muscles, who can hold about 300 grams of glucose? So I will not repeat what so
You have
beautifully
just about 3
Dr.
minutes. You have just about 3 minutes again.
Yes, thank you. I will be
Sure.
ending in 3 minutes. Yes. So I really liked when Dr. Ragbir said that about the muscles, that we lose muscles after 30 years of age. So this is important that we emphasize strength training, resistance training, because muscles can hold a lot of glucose, and it's very advisable to do this, and also to promote some kind of exercise which not only is good for the muscle system but also the internal organs. So one of the exercises that we're checking right now is the deep squat, which is something that we used to do as Asians a lot, but now a lot less. Next slide, please, Naveen. Yes, next. Yes. So the challenges and the opportunities, especially focused on the Indian diaspora, is that women are on a higher risk in the Indian population in Suriname due to their cultural, dietary, and work habits, because nowadays women are still busy with their household and working at the same time, compared to the Indian men in Suriname. And also that that we should have more culturally sensitive training programs, for instance, so women-only exercise facilities is more attractive for them. Thank you so much. Yes.
Another excellent presentation. I want to thank you very, very much for that.
Thank you so much.
I see Dennis from Vihara Foundation has his hand up. Dennis, go ahead, please. Please unmute your mic.
Oh, yeah.
Good.
Excellent presentation. I have been listening to everybody and learning a lot. I just wanted to add a little something in here. Last December, I was diagnosed with diabetes. My sugar was reading 159 plus, and my A1C was 8.5. And then I got invited to this diabetes reversal clinic in South America, Colombia. And I went there and I went on a diet and exercise and vitamin C treatment. And my diabetes reversed. So I just wanted to offer a little glimpse of hope that, you know, all is not that bad. I mean, if you have diabetes, it's possible to reverse it. This is a charitable organization. Our interest is not to make money from this diabetes treatment. So if anybody's interested in this, I'll be happy to share the information. And even if you cannot afford it, I'm happy to share the regimen so that you can try it at home. Just wanted to add that.
Thank you so much. And can you share it in our chat, please, for everybody?
I'll share my email, and then I can email you the brochure. It is in a in a beach resort. It's made comfortable for like families and patient. But not everybody can afford that. It costs like $100 a day for room and food. If you can't afford that, I can send you I can email you the ingredients, how to make the special teas and you know, and all these things, you know. But definitely, yes, you have to get off carbohydrates for at least 3 to 4 weeks. So I'll put my email in here, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dennis.
Yeah, sure.
Much appreciated.
Yes.
I
Dr.
just want to add.
Shadanan. Oh, sorry.
I just want to add, sorry, yes, that 4 apples is equal to 100 grams of glucose already. 1 apple is 25 grams. And I agree when Dr. Tulak Singh said that it's very difficult for a diabetes patient to calculate the calories.
Yeah, Dr. Tulak Singh, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Dr. Shadanan, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. It is a very important presentation today. Well, I can tell you, I'm still tired. Yesterday, I came back from my mission Gimitology from Bharat, north part of India, Uttar Pradesh and Bihar. And I am just last night, I arrived here in Rotterdam, so I am not so active. But I've listened to all of the speakers, and all of them, they are looking this disorder. I think it is better to speak about a metabolic problem.
Yes.
So when you want to understand what is diabetic, what causes diabetic, and what will be the treatment? Well, Charak Samhita, that is the godfather of Ayurveda, and I studied Ayurveda in Benares Hindu University, where allopathic and Ayurveda is studying under one roof. So I can tell you that to understand this disorder, then we have to know the constitution of the person.
Yeah, Baba,
Okay.
I like where you're going with this, but I just need to tell you, we have one more speaker still to come.
Okay,
Yeah.
then
And I have a feeling he's going to address some of what you're talking about.
Okay, we will talk about this area, but there are 3 types. Bitter gourd is good for the kapha, but not for the pitta. Okay, I will talk about this, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Ken, very quickly, please.
Yes, I was going to say that I am kind of like living proof that you can turn it around, because in my culture from St. Vincent, we had a culture of drinking and eating and partying, you know, and like forget, I know the Trinidadian know that like half the soca songs are about drinking rum, right? And I was able to change that life around by dieting and exercise. I do a lot of hiking. I lost 30 pounds. I still am not there. I'm not, you know, where I need to be as far as my targets, but mentally, you know, you're more acute. You just feel better about life. And one of the things that's very helpful is I joined up with, you know, because where I live, there's not too many Indians, but I joined up with a group, and we're politically active. And it's you know, people from India and who live here. And we exchange like recipes and things like that. And I think that is a very good thing that this group could do, because just eating alone, right? There are many, you know, low, let's call it diabetic meals you could make, and just share that information. That's one good start. And even like on the exercise, if you could do it as a group, it's really helpful. And, you know, like, again, in my culture, it was like your uncles get together. They used to say, when nobody's drinking, nobody's talking. After 1 drink, 1 guy is talking. After 2 drink, 2 guys are talking. After 3 drink, Johnny Walker is talking. So that was the culture, right? And you all know this, because you obviously Trinidad is like known for carnival and drinking rum and all of that, right? So we get caught up in that culture, and it magnifies so much. So I would just, you know, conclude by saying that I would say I'm proof that you can turn it around, but it takes some work and it takes some networking.
Yeah. It's fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for that, Dr. Amirani. As you say, I mean, we've been to Suriname. It's almost the same, yes?
Yes, it's the same. Yes.
Yeah.
Totally. Yes. I
So
can
your
agree.
closing comments.
Yes, so closing comment. Thank you so much for this platform. I think the people, everybody who is going to watch or watching right now is going to learn a lot. And I especially like this small comment. I'm also living proof that that it can be reversed. So I was diagnosed pre-diabetic, and after I joined CrossFit, that's why I am a CrossFit athlete. It's reversed completely. So the only thing that I change is my exercise habit,
I see.
which was low. So, and it was more marathon of 5 kilometers. But the only thing that I added was strength training, which is why these shoulders are so broad and everybody's saying that I look like a man. So I also like I don't know who it was again, but the stigma. Oh yeah, Dukharan, Shobha. She talked about stigma and diabetes. So that's another topic that we can do a whole presentation about. Thank you so
Sure.
much. Yes.
Sure, yeah, and I think we need to do that. And I think we need to bring back this topic, Dr. Mahabir. Farhana also raised a very important point. Create a diet plan to adapt Indian foods to a Mediterranean diet. Now, if we can, Farhana, if you want to spearhead that and if you want to have a conversation with anybody in the audience to get that going, I think it's a fabulous idea. So in addition to everything that all the other speakers have said, and what Dr. Jabrandan just raised in terms of the physical activity and so on, we absolutely need to create a plan for ourselves that's unique to us. Yeah, thank you very much. Let's hear now from our fifth and final speaker. This is Dr. David Lee Shenton. He is a certified integrative health coach, Ayurveda and traditional Chinese medicine consultant, and author of several books on self-mastery and holistic well-being. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Namaste to everyone. The presentations have been so beautiful. It covered so many points from all these illustrious speakers. And as we noticed, so many people are touched by diabetes in the Indian diaspora. In fact, most people know someone who has diabetes. Either it's a family member, it's some friend or something like this. And it's interesting because from all the research, some that you have heard already, it has been found that in the Indian diaspora, between the ages of 30 and 40, that's when the Indians tend to start exhibiting signs of diabetes. And that's pretty young as compared to the general population. So let's start by looking at the big picture. I'll just share my screen. Hold a minute.
Okay, it's coming up.
Okay.
Right, visible to us now.
Right. So my topic today is going to touch just briefly on Ayurveda, self-awareness, and epigenetics, and how we can help control diabetes in the Indian diaspora. And based on all that we have heard previously from the other speakers, you see why it is so important that we develop what I call self-awareness. Diabetes is not just a sugar problem, as you have heard. It's really lifestyle and stress problems. So for many people in the Indian diaspora, even when they look slim, the risk is there due to high genetic predisposition, as we have heard from some of the speakers. And if you add that to long hours of sitting because we are working, or long hours of watching TV, lack of sleep, and emotional stress that a lot of people are subjected to these days because of how life is lived, then you can understand why it's so prevalent amongst people. But according to epigenetics, which is like a new science that has been emerging, it shows that your genes are not really your destiny. Not because you may be predisposed, there's nothing you can do about it. Epigenetics reveal how if we change our lifestyle, our diet, the level of stress, and the influences in our environment, we can actually help to keep some of these negative genetic expressions from expressing themselves in our life. So it demonstrates that genes can be influenced by lifestyle choices, dietary patterns, stress levels, and environmental factors. And your positive behavior changes can switch off or significantly delay diabetes-related gene expressions. Even those with strong family histories of diabetes can modify their risk through constant healthy practices that can alter the gene expression. So we're not really powerless. The choices that we make on a daily basis really have a great influence on how we live our life. And even if we are already suffering from type 2 diabetes, as you have heard from the other speakers, if you can make certain lifestyle modifications, then you can actually either arrest or you can slow down the process of it in your life. Ayurveda has been around for over 5,000 years. It's one of the oldest systems of natural medicine in the world. And Ayurveda actually looks at diabetes as resulting from metabolic and emotional imbalance, which affects what is called the doshas in the body. And the doshas are actually talking about the different personality types. We are all different. We are not the same. So for instance, Ayurveda explains that you need to know what is your basic constitution? What is your makeup? Are you kapha, meaning that you're more prone to weight gain? Or are you pitta, where you need more cooling foods or more calming influence? Or are you vata, meaning that you are more easily stressed? And there are dietary regimes regarding all these different areas of life. Ayurveda also emphasizes balance, lifestyle, mental state, spiritual well-being, because health is not merely the absence of disease, but living in harmony with your body, mind, and also your consciousness. Each dimension influences each other. A big area of Ayurveda is more on prevention. It is said that if you have proper diet, then medicine is not necessary. And if you have wrong diet, then medicine will not help. So it is very necessary that we pay attention to the food and the lifestyle that we do. And it's important also to incorporate other healing modalities like therapeutic herbs. And there are many of them in the Ayurvedic pharmacopoeia. There are some things that you may be accustomed to in your diet. Bitter melon, fenugreek, turmeric. These have all been researched to show that they create a nice effect in helping blood sugar levels. And they're comparable to the effect of some medications. Now, knowing this is not enough. You should also, of course, check with your doctor, especially if you're on medication, to see what you're doing when you change your diet, that you're not doing something that is averse to the medicine that you're taking. Ayurveda also places emphasis on correct food, just like modern dietary systems. So choosing whole grains like brown rice, quinoa, millet over other refined options help. Also, using healing spices like turmeric, cinnamon, fenugreek, cumin, and coriander. All these things Indians naturally use in their culinary kitchen. And bitter vegetables like bitter gourd, using leaves like neem, using moringa or saijan, as some people call it. All these things are already available to the Indians. This is something that you use. Knowing how to use them in order to help regulate your blood sugar levels can be very helpful. Ayurveda also talks about daily rhythm, sleeping on time, having enough movement during the day, etc. But in order to accomplish all this, the knowledge is not enough. We need to have an awareness and learn how to master ourselves, because the journey to metabolic health really begins within. So cultivating self-awareness and self-mastery creates a foundation for lasting transformation. So what is self-awareness? It really helps you to identify triggers of unhealthy eating patterns, to help you recognize your stress patterns, and to understand your emotions. Self-mastery goes a little further. Self-mastery helps strengthen your control over your emotion and impulses. It helps you to really be aware of the type of actions that you take and help you to make long-term changes in your life. Together, if you can start developing these skills, then you will notice the ability to maintain a strict dietary routine or exercise routine will be easier than just saying, okay, I need to exercise, because most people don't follow through. That's the problem. Unless they reach the point where their doctor tells them, this is going to destroy you. I heard from one person recently who wasn't exercising or anything. And yeah, they had a history of diabetes in the family, but they were not too concerned until they went for a medical checkup, which they were not doing for many years. And the doctor told them their A1C was so high that they were good candidate for a heart attack very soon. Based on that, he immediately started to implement change. So we don't have to wait until we have a death sentence, so to speak, to start making changes. But in order to do that, we need to have this self-discipline. And this is where self-awareness, being aware of your triggers, can help you. So when we talk about self-awareness, then there are certain things that you can do. Identify eating patterns, your stress triggers, your emotional responses to food, how long you sleep, the type of activities you do. Start making some notes about yourself and keep a detailed journal for a full week to see the kind of patterns that you are doing on a daily basis. And once you have done that, the next step is to start implementing change based on your being aware of what you're doing. So change could be looking at your diet, modifying it, looking at your exercise routine. Start by building small habits. Small habits build over time. Sometimes when people want to exercise after having exercised for a long time, they say, okay, I'm going to walk for an hour. That doesn't work. So start small where it's pleasing and then build up over time. And if you do that, making these healthy choices, then you will notice that it will become a habit. And that's how you develop self-mastery. It has to become a habit. Of course, we heard a lot about stress and the effect of stress. And Ayurveda emphasizes yoga, breathing exercises called pranayama, meditation, because all these have proven to help reduce stress in the body. Also, making the conscious choices, I just spoke about, being more self-aware, creating spaces between your actions. Stop for a moment and think before you go and have that meal. Ask yourself, am I really hungry? And a simple exercise, put your hand here on your chest before you eat and close your eyes and say, am I hungry? Or am I going to eat just out of habit or emotions? And wait for the answer before you go and eat. Don't eat until you're full to capacity. Ayurveda says eat only half or 3/4 full. And then if you want more, again, put your hand and ask yourself, am I hungry or is it habit? Just these simple things can help you to make changes in your lifestyle. I heard the last speaker and some people were asking about changes, how we can adopt our lifestyle, the type of food we eat. Yes, you can. The familiar foods that Indians eat, we're already using things like fenugreek, lentils, like dals, bitter gourd, saijan. All these things, we use moringa in our food. We use tulsi leaves. All these things we can make as teas that can help us. And these are all from our own heritage. And it's important when we have someone within the family that is suffering or having the effect of diabetes, that the whole family should get involved to support. So everyone, especially as you notice that the family has this predisposition, Indian families have this predisposition, don't wait until you start to get it. If you notice that your mother had it, or your father, or your brother, or uncle, then get the whole family involved to start making changes where in the household, embrace healthier rotis, curries, make sustainable changes, look at food groups that can help you. And it's important also to address what is called the stress management in the Indian diaspora, the type of cultural identity, intergenerational tensions that we may be subjected to, pressures at work. And we need to also maintain practical tools for emotional balance in both traditional practices and looking at contemporary evidence of how we can do that. So coming down to the end, anticipating obstacles prepares you for success. Every challenge has a practical solution, but the key is planning ahead rather than reacting in the moment when your willpower is depleted and old habits exert strongest pull. So look at the challenges like fast food temptations. Instead of going towards the fast food, prepare healthy alternatives in advance. Look at sedentary work, sitting for so many hours. The last speaker spoke about some exercises that you can actually do from a sitting position. Every hour, even every 2 minutes or so, make some change, shift around, stand around. If you're working on your computer, I advise people in corporate world that set a timer that allows you to maybe stand up and stretch every 15, 20 minutes. Just standing up and stretch, just turning your body from side to side, lifting your arm. All these things, just for a few minutes, help to move the energy. And that makes a big difference. And challenge your emotional eating habits. Look at stresses that maybe you're suffering from loneliness, anxiety triggers, all these type of things. So you need to take a deep look at yourself. And this is where self-awareness comes in. You have to be aware of what triggers you and what caused you to make those unhealthy choices, because many of them are very unconscious. So if you want to change, even if you're not suffering from diabetes or even some heart ailment, I advise you to take a moment to sit down and look at your lifestyle over a week and write it down. And then you will see, what am I eating, my sleeping hours, what am I doing, exercise, out, etc. And then if it's not in tune with what all the other speakers have been saying and promoting, then start making changes if you want. It's important also for you to have regular checkups with your doctors to ensure that your A1C and things like that are in proper control. So deepen your awareness, make wiser choices, and practice true healing. Ayurveda investigated in detail. It teaches that authentic, lasting healing begins with awakening consciousness and recognizing the fundamental unity of mind, body, and spirit. So, in closing, I'd just like to share with you a course that I offer, which is a 7-step self-mastery blueprint. Because true health transformation requires more than diet and exercise, it demands emotional balance, self-awareness, and sustainable lifestyle rooted in change. So by living in harmony in nature, as Ayurveda teaches, we can help reverse risk factors. Thank you very much for your attention. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to indulge.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lee. Excellent presentation as well. We've had 5 excellent presentations today. Thank you so much. And we have, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to remind you, we have 5 minutes again, 5 or 6 minutes, and I would like to see as many of you get your questions answered or be able to make your comments. So please go ahead and raise your hand so we can take those questions. I'm seeing Varen with his hand up. Varen, go ahead, please. Can you unmute your mic?
Hi, really nice to see you, Shalima and Kumar. This is an excellent topic you brought up, and definitely you need to have a continuation of this. Diabetes in South Africa in the 70s, 80s, the Indians, they had the highest heart attack rate per capita in the world. Now, the reason I said that is those of you may know Professor Chris Barnard, South African, did the first heart transplant in South Africa. But that was amongst the whites, and they had a different form of heart disease. Amongst the Indians, the heart is such a great mechanism. It can't die literally on its own, except through age. It is hurt by so many other factors that leads to heart disease. Now, in South Africa, husband and wife ate the same meal. But the men in my family too never lived over 60. All the men died in all the families, and the women lived till 80, 90 years old. Reiterating stress is a major factor, very major. As soon as we born, get married, buy a home, then buy a car, then put the kids to work. Men did that. Fast forward to me being in the US, living in Santa Barbara. Dr. Sansom, the first person in the US to administer insulin, live in my hometown. I became diabetic. And since I became diabetic, of course, when we talk about testing your sugar, you talk about pinpricking your hand with a pinprick blood monitor. Well, later on, we find out we go for a 3-month blood analysis called the A1C. And we started to follow the A1C and follow my endocrinologist, who was white, book studied, never experienced diabetes. And we were told, like, for example, oatmeal is great. And certain things like basmati rice and certain rice with low glycemic level, brown bread is much better. All of that turned out to be grossly untrue. We found that out when I was given a meter to put on my body 5 years ago. It has now progressed to a single meter on your arm called a CGM, continuous blood glucose monitor, that gives you your sugar reading every 5 minutes. Now, what it showed is that when you get up in the morning, amongst Indians, we have an unusually high rate of sugar spiking, and no doctor so far has been able to find out, excuse me, why this occurs. So the BMI, which was your body mass index, is over 100 years old. Good news, because it's over 100 years old, done for the white people. We Indians don't really have to comply with that. Of course, within perimeters, but in terms of stress, Indian food is the worst. Now, by that I mean, like for example, in South Africa and me coming to Trinidad and Suriname, beautiful doubles, beautiful biryani, rice. Like in South Africa, be it a religious or wedding or function, we eat biryani, shoots of sugar up on a Sunday morning. Now you got up fresh, you good. And then you have dal. That shoots it even higher. Then you have salad, which is mainly carrots in South Africa, again higher. Ended up with suji. You put a gun to your head and just pull the trigger. Because at the end of the meal, you feel so tired. Why are you tired? No, you are not tired. Your blood sugar has shot through the roof. You go home and sleep. Okay, all the negatives. Here's the positives. I have tried and then changed my endocrinologist to a Pakistani doctor, young guy who's totally open to all this. I've tried all the other rices, breads, and the best thing that will work is quinoa. Switch to quinoa in place of rice.
Okay.
Secondly,
Mm-hmm.
use lettuce as a form of roti. And
Mm-hmm.
just doing that will absolutely keep your sugar down. Now, exercise. Exercise is important, but like the previous person mentioned, weight training, when my sugar goes high and I let it go high because I want to eat and enjoy certain things, I used to go walk, but walking does not bring it down. My meter showed that, and it showed it with all the other patients also. What it does, you got to get your heart rate up, hold it for 3 minutes. That's for your heart. For your sugar, you got to have it more strenuous. And like the previous person said about your muscles holding sugar, I started weight lifting simply
Okay.
in the living room.
Varan, this is excellent information, and I wish we had the time to take an entire presentation from you on how you've been able to make changes. And please make a final comment because we are at closing time and we have 3 other people waiting with their hands up.
As usual, yes.
Would
Final thing.
you like to get a comment from our final speaker, Dr. David Lee?
Yeah. Okay. So final thing, weight lift at home and then just de-stress, and that's all. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Dr. Lee, can you just comment for us, please? Based on what Varan has just shared.
Sure. What he was saying was very informative, of course. And a lot of the things that he mentioned is totally correct. My observation is that everyone is different. And so what works for one may not work for all. And this is where the Ayurvedic principle comes in, because instead of saying one size fits all, one has to look at one's own makeup in terms of what is called your personality type. Are you more kapha? Are you more pitta? Are you a combination of both? Also, what is happening to you at the moment? Meaning that you can be kapha by nature but have a pitta imbalance, or you can be pitta by nature and having a kapha imbalance, meaning you have too much weight, etc., etc. So taking all these things in consideration and also looking at the lifestyle modification as suggested by the other speakers, all these need to come into play. So yes, exercise important, but how long should you exercise? Who should exercise? What condition are you in? These things you need to work with someone who is qualified to be able to assess that, especially if you are having certain health problems.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that. Let me ask Radha to bring her question or her comment because I know she's going to raise something related to what you've just said. Radha, go ahead, please, unmute your mic.
Yes, thank you so much. This is great after a long time. I came especially to see Dr. David Lynch in town because he is our wonderful leader of the Caribbean. So thank you so much. That was wonderful. I really wanted to just comment. It was great. But just one more tiny thing is that if you look at Jyotish, then you look at the sixth house, that's the house of illnesses. And when we see Venus sitting there, when it is not in a good condition, people could have diabetic issues. I just wanted to add that because it's a great study to look into it and how professionals can use this in their profession to see more depth in a patient's life. Thank you. That's it.
Okay, so we're talking about the zodiac here?
Yes, yes, Jyotish, yes. The sixth house is about illnesses and so on. And I think David can elaborate if he wants to. But just adding that when a Venus in the sixth is not happy, then that could give certain diabetic issues because it has to do with the juices in the body and all that. So it's a very deep study. And these are just, of course, simple little things, but yeah, something to look at it.
Dr. Lee.
Yeah. So, yeah. So Jyotish, yes, is a great study. You know, we say we read the Patra to see exactly what's happening in our life. And from Jyotish, one can tell what can happen in the future. And therefore, one can take some steps to actually avoid the danger that may has not yet come. It's a great science from Vedic studies, and it's very much used in Ayurveda, actually, knowing from the birth chart what are the doshas that the person aligned to, and that actually helps quite a lot in figuring what possibilities are there and at what time in life certain things may happen in the person's life. So that's a good insight, Radha.
So you're saying that Jyotish is really a diagnostic tool?
Yeah, well, not necessarily, but Jyotish is used like a map that tells you this is the territory and this is what you will find on the territory. But you as the individual now decide the route on the map based on knowing what the map is. So for instance, if you know that if you going to this part of the country and there's a roadblock in the area and you know that in advance, then now you can do things to prevent yourself from getting into that traffic jam. You may decide to take another route. And so Jyotish is like that. It is not the route, it is the map that shows you the possibilities that are there in your life. Knowing that in advance, you can do yagyas, which can help avert the danger, or you can also do things like lifestyle modifications that can help you to kind of arrest the situation that may be coming in your life. So it's a great science that can work hand in hand.
Interesting. Thank you. Dr. Albert Prasad, your hand is up. And Dr. Prasad, may I ask? Please go ahead and unmute your mic.
Right. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
Yes, but question or make your comments, sir. Can I please ask you, what is your opinion about the use of Jyotish for diagnosis and treatment and so on? Any comment
You're asking
on
me?
that? Yes.
No, to be honest, no, I've never heard of it before, so I'm going to be honest.
I see.
But my point is, I'm coming from it from a strictly medical point of view. I didn't hear all the presentation, and to give clarity, there's two types of diabetes: type 1, type 2. Type 1 is very serious. That's where you have insulin, and the pancreas not being able to produce it, and there's lots of complications with type 1 diabetes. That includes coma. Type 2 is much more prevalent. And just to make the point that coronary heart disease and diabetes is the biggest killer amongst our communities across the world, whether it's South Africa, Fiji, Trinidad, Guyana, and India. It is like an epidemic. It kills. It's riddled around lifestyle and how we eat and various things. But there's also a cultural aspect. And the cultural aspect is about people believing that having a big belly is a sign of good life. And there's still that myth that needs to be challenged. I come from a family, I go to New York, and everybody they show you the big belly and tell you, how life is good. But also to say is that diabetes also has other complications around things like sight. You can go blind. And things like foot care, which could be linked to things like gangrene, because you can lose your joint. There's other psychosocial stuff like, people losing their libido, not having sex and various things. And when you're seeing patients, you have to evaluate and assess all of that. One of the complications that I see, because my area is psychiatry, is that depression is a major feature amongst diabetes. It may be to do with a lifestyle, maybe living in a cold country like the UK, that is damp and miserable like today, and it brings that. But somehow I feel people with diabetes, we tend a lot to lecture them what they should be doing and offering up all the various remedies and cures and various things. And I tend to take the view of saying to patients, sometimes you don't need advice and tablets. Maybe think about enjoying life, and enjoying life can reduce your stress, reduce your anxiety. Sometimes we may have to treat the depression, but simple things like you've mentioned about Ayurvedics and exercise, these are things that makes you feel good and has other benefits. So my point is really that we must not lose the psychological impact of physical illness, and particularly the psychological impact on diabetes. And it comes in two forms, and we're trained that way to recognize it. It is complex, it's dangerous, and a lot of the deaths can be preventable. That's my point I want to make. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much for raising that. Let's have a final comment very quickly from Mr. Praveen Kumar from Fiji. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, thanks very much. It's been an enjoyable
Very
morning.
very briefly. We're running out of time.
And I think this will be very good source of information for the Ministry of Health. But listening to all the speakers, lifestyle has a lot to do with it. And for Fiji, diabetes and heart attacks has actually become pandemic. We have, I think, about 3 amputations per week. And people don't exercise. And David Lee mentioned about eating beta melon or Karela. Our younger generation in Fiji and overseas where we have settled, they have become meat eaters and they don't even bother about eating vegetables. So all in all, I think this is a very good presentation, and I will probably use this to send it to Fiji, to various organizations. And the other sad thing, which I learned only a month ago in Fiji, was that the rate of diabetes and obesity and kidney failure among our Fiji Indian women has increased sharply in the last 10 years. So that's where I'll leave it. Thanks very much.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And kudos to all of our speakers today. I'm going to ask Dr. Tilak Singh, do you have a closing comment?
Not
Dr.
really.
Tilak
Thank you.
Singh?
I was delighted to be part of your panel. I think the questions were well asked. I think they were searching questions. In all of this, we know a lot about what may cause the disease. We don't know a great deal about what are the best strategies for preventing it at the primary care level, and that really is the challenge.
I see. Yeah. Thank you very much. So let's get a comment as well from Dr. Ragbir, Dr. Anisa Ragbir.
Thank you for having me as well. I just want to urge people to not just think about, don't wait for something bad to happen. Everybody needs to start implementing change. These diets that we talk about is not just for somebody who is diabetic, but it's just a healthy diet and an unhealthy diet. And we all have to be on this healthy diet. The same things that we talked about here is the same things I try to do, and each person must try to do, and what we should try and do for our children, because we need to change from very young, not wait for something bad to happen. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Shobi, we started off with you. Having seen all the presentations, please share your closing comments.
Okay, so after hearing all the other speakers, it just confirmed with me for the way I manage my diabetes now. It encompassed everything that was discussed, and it just made me feel better about me going out to the public and enlightening other people with it. And honestly, I really hope that we have a second session with this, because the topics discussed, it was really, it was a holistic, it was very comprehensive, and I really love this, and I wish that many more people who's living with diabetes could have been present at this presentation. My closing thing though is let's continue to educate, support, and inspire each other. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Dr. Amirani, your closing comments, please.
Yes, I would like to say thank you for this amazing platform, because all the presentations were amazing and so informative, as Shobha said, comprehensive, intensive even. And somebody also said, I am depressive after this presentation. So it's very confronting also. But the main point is that this is a main problem that not only Indian diaspora deals with, but it has effects on many aspects in life and in the economy and productivity.
Yeah.
So we definitely should have a second session. Thank you so much for everything. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dr. Lee, your closing comments.
Yes, it was great to be part of this illustrious crowd. I thoroughly enjoyed listening to everyone's presentation. I also like the comment by the second to last person, the psychiatrist, who emphasized that we have to look beyond just medical treatment. So little emphasis is placed on emotions and the effect of emotions on health. In fact, especially in the business world, not much emphasis is placed on emotional health. A lot is placed on physical and mental health. And the last point I'd like to make is that it's important for everyone to look deeper inside themselves, become more self-aware, and to understand that they are not just physical beings. They are actually beings that created physical forms. And you have to discover that being within. Find your Atma, find your deepest self, and get in tune with that. When you do that, then you now start to gain mastery over yourself. So thank you very much for everybody.
What a wonderful way to end. Thank you so much. And thank you very much to all of our speakers, all of our participants today. It has been extremely enriching. Thank you. I turn you all over now to Ashurya. Ashurya, so nice to have you.
Yes, thank you, Shalima, for moderating so wonderfully, and thank you all for being here. Remember, this is a public meeting hosted by the Indo-Caribbean Cultural Center. We are asking you to kindly give us your suggestions, and you can contact Dr. Mahabir for details. Our topic next Sunday will be children's books in indentureship and its legacies. Quick thank you to our planning team, by Dr. Kumar Mahabir, Shalma Mohammed. Thanks to our IT consultants, Daryl Gransam and Navin Mungal. And thanks to Daryl again for designing the poster. Please visit, like, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Rashidia Onderhoed from the Netherlands. Goodbye, Dhanyawad, everyone.